Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Coffman. I want to welcome everyone to our fourth installment on the Torah portion of the week. This week we're holding by Parshas Vaera, so there are a number of interesting things that I want to draw out from the Parsha. The first thing is to try and explain what's going on between Abraham and God in the story of the people of Sedom. And the fact that the people of Sedom were so wicked, God says, I'm going to wipe them out. And in the end, Avraham wants to have this discussion, this dialogue, in order that God doesn't wipe out the righteous with the ones that are going to be wiped out. Right? So Avraham argues from the standpoint of Chesed that, why should God wipe out the righteous with evil people together? So the Torah says in chapter 18, the Torah says that God says in verse 20, so Hashem said, because of the outcry of Sedom and Amorah that is very great, and because their sin has been very grave, I'm going to descend and see if they act in accordance with the outcry which has come to me, then destruction. If not, I will know. The men turned from there, they went to Sedom, while Abraham was still standing before Hashem. And Abraham came forward and said, will you stamp out the righteous along with the wicked? He says, if they're 50, if they're 40, etc. Will you wipe out the people if there are enough righteous people? So that is Genesis chapter 18, starting from verse 20, which goes further, so from 20 onwards. So we have this discussion, right? We have this discussion, and Abraham comes in front of God and says, well, what are you doing? Why are you going to take these righteous people, if there are righteous people, against these evil people that should be destroyed? Now, it's interesting, just even before we get there, it's interesting that God says that he himself is going to descend. And he himself, with his Beis Din, right, with the higher heavenly court, they're going to come and see if what is going on in Sedom is true. So the first thing is that why does God have to do that? I mean, after all, if God knows present, past, and future, he knows what's going on in Sedom. If he knows what's going on in Sedom, he doesn't need to see. He doesn't need, in his words, to come down, right? It's an anthropomorphism, right? It's using human language to try and understand what's going on. God's not going to pop down with, him and his whole entourage. You're going to be able to see it. That doesn't, God's not a, you can't put God so much, so to speak, in a box. So, right, the question is, how are you going to do that? How is God going to do that? Because that's it's a more philosophical question. In this case, God says, even if I know the future, and even if I know the past, or I know what's going on, it doesn't matter. I'm going to investigate it myself. Now, since God doesn't need to do it, he does it in order that, how could he do what he's going to do and hide it from his servant Abraham? So he comes down, checks things out, and he sees exactly how evil these people are, and the fact that he has judged that they should be wiped off the face of the map. But before he does that, he's not going to do it without telling Abraham first. So God comes down in his humility, again, because he doesn't need to do this, but he's showing the ultimate in humility by coming down and wanting to discuss this with Abraham. So that's what the Torah says, that the situation's very grave. I'm going to come down, I'm going to check it out. And then Abraham comes forward. Avraham says that, how could you stamp out the righteous along with the wicked? What if I find 50 righteous people? What if I find 40 righteous people? So God agrees even if he finds 10. Now in the end, we know that Avraham didn't find 10. And we know what's the significance of 10. So within Judaism, the significance is a quorum. 10 men make up what we call a minyan, in order that you can pray together, and there's certain prayers that you're obligated to say. Certainly when you have a minyan, if you don't have a minyan of 10 men, then you can't say them. They're higher levels of spirituality. Be that as it may, 10 people are what we call a community. So Abraham gets God to go from 50 to 10. Right? He bargains his way down. Because he bargains his way down, we understand the importance of community. That's why it's important for all you men out there, all you Jewish men or Jewish men wannabes, that it's important to pray with a quorum. A woman doesn't need to. It's a whole different discussion, which we're not going to get into now, about the differences between men and women and what their obligations are. Be that as it may, a community that prays together, just as a side point, their prayers are much more accepted. In other words, even if you say, wow, we have 50 people, 100 people that pray in this congregation, and a lot of them don't keep, so much Torah or so many mitzvahs, nonetheless, if you pray with a quorum, with a community, the judgment on that prayer is much less than if it be as an individual. So that means that if an individual, for whatever reason, can't pray with a minyan at that time, or he can't get up, he's sick, whatever the case is, so he should pray at the time that minyan prays, or if there are more than one minyan in that area, he should pray at a specific time when the entire community, when a community is praying, in order that he'll be part of it even if he's by himself. Because if he's by himself, for whatever reason, the judgment on that prayer is much stronger. He doesn't have the community with him in order to protect him. Because if we look at the prayers in general, the prayers themselves are in the plural, right? We say things on behalf of others, on behalf of the entire community, so that it should help the individual. But the reality is that it's said in plural. If it would be said in singular, it'd all be about me, 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 me. And the Torah says you're not supposed to think about you. It's about the community. It's about helping others. It's about praying for others. That's why it's brought down that if a person needs a certain thing, let's say he's having difficulty in livelihood, if he prays for somebody else that they should have livelihood, then that helps him more for himself. Because it's showing the selfless act by saying, yes, I need livelihood, that's true. But I also want this other person to have livelihood. Because of that selfless act, God can help you as well. The fact that you looked out for someone else. So therefore, whether it comes to livelihood, whether it comes to refuah, if somebody's sick, right? For instance, we pray for people to get better. And if you pray for someone to get healed and that person is sick, then you'll get answered as well. So there are many things that work hand in hand if we look at prayer, and prayer is in the plural, right? So it helps others, it helps us. But if you're only praying by yourself, now again, if a person lives in their own island and they can't get to a synagogue, they don't live in a Jewish community, for instance, okay, that's a little bit of a different story. But if a person prays, the point here is that if a person prays by himself, then God is going to be that much more stringent with your prayer, because you're not praying. You don't have the luxury of praying with a community. So that's one idea. The thing is that that's the importance of why Abraham gets to the number 10. At least that there should be 10 people. The obvious question really is Abraham represents chesed, right? He's done tremendous amount of chesed in his life. He's brought many thousands of people under his wing, him and his wife. He brought absolute monotheism to the world. He converted the men. Sarah converted the women. He was doing tremendous amounts of bringing people back to belief in one God. So he has this tremendous amount of chesed. The issue is is that God said these people have to be wiped off the face of the map. Now, as much chesed as Avraham has, if God says these people have to be wiped out and they're deserving to be wiped out, how in the world can he pray for them? Make the question stronger, as Mori Rebbe, Rav Moshe Sternbuch Shlita may be well and strong, says that the people of Sedom, among other things, besides hating, people that helped out poor people, and they, killed people that gave tzedakah to help out poor people, etc. They were also of the Avodah Zarah. Right? They also worshipped idols. Now, worshiping idols is a capital offense. So, if it's a capital offense, people who cause others to go after idolatry, right? It's called being a masis or a mediach. You're causing somebody to go astray, i.e. to follow idolatry. So the Torah there says that you're not allowed to find a merit for these type of people. Just the opposite. You're supposed to help if you can and get them killed. Why? Because they are causing other people to leave God. And they're doing it willingly. Because they're doing it willingly, you have absolutely no right. It's totally forbidden for you to find a merit to try and save them. Right? So my Rebbe asked the question, Avraham, what are you doing? I understand you represent absolute chesed. You are the father of chesed, of doing acts of loving kindness, helping others. Your tent was open in 4 directions. And people were satisfied when they came in and when they left. You took care of their needs. You fed them. You did all these great things. But judgment is judgment. If we have a halacha, and that the Torah law says somebody like this has to be put to death because they're causing a tremendous detriment to the Jewish people. They're causing others to go astray and go after idolatry. So because of that, you have no right, and it's forbidden to find a merit to help them live. So the question is, why is he praying for them? They have a death sentence. Well, if someone's got a death sentence for what, in this case, for what they've done, you're not allowed to find a merit for them. If a person had a death sentence for something else, right, you would be allowed to find a merit for them in the Sanhedrin. Right, the Sanhedrin of 70, the 70 elders didn't want to kill people. They went out of the way trying to find reasons not to kill people. Be that as it may, there are certain cases where you're not allowed to find a merit to save somebody. I mean, if we understand that Avraham knew what the Torah was and knew what God expected from him, then this is an impossibility. This is an absolute transgression, according to this. So the commentators say that, yes, God came to give judgment, and destroy these people. So there was a conflict between the God of judgment and the God of mercy. Now keep in mind that at the beginning, when God created the world, he wanted to create the world with divine justice. The problem was he had to combine divine justice with divine mercy, because otherwise the world wouldn't be able to exist. There are certain individuals in history who were able to live according to divine justice. Yaakov, Rabbi Akiva, and others that went through tremendous suffering because they wanted to be held to a higher standard. Now, obviously not everyone can do that, and people, most people would not be able to live up to that. So God, in his infinite mercy, no pun intended, created the world also with mercy. Because if he wouldn't have created the world with mercy as well, we wouldn't have a world today. Right? The world wouldn't exist. Everyone would be wiped off the face of the map. So there was this constant fight, I guess, between judgment and mercy. Judgment said, these people are so bad, we can't help them. Right? Nothing is going to help them. God makes a decree, that's it. Divine judgment says, wipe them out. But what about rachamim? What about divine compassion? Right? So you have this conflict. God has infinite mercy to a certain extent until that mercy runs out. So Avraham says, fine, I understand there's this idea that God want to destroy. And these people, he didn't disagree that they were causing people to go astray, to be idolaters, etc. They deserve to be put to death. Avraham says, I have no problem with that. Even with the amount of chesed that he did in his life, and that he helped others, still he understood, chesed has limits. Nonetheless, what does Avraham say? Avraham says, fine, if you're going to destroy them, just don't take the righteous with the evil people. Right? Because that's what he says. You're going to stamp out the righteous with the wicked. Now God could have turned back and said, you're questioning me? You're questioning how my divine judgment works? So as my Rebbe says on this part, we don't understand how divine judgment works. Makes absolutely no sense to us. That's the age-old question, tzaddik v'ralo. Why do good things happen? Why do bad things happen to good people? We have no answers. Right? Because if you believe God is just, then how does evil, how does evil work? And how does it have power? So this is a big question. This is a big question. Nonetheless, Avraham asked the question, are you going to stamp out righteousness with righteous people with the wicked? Now, the Talmud says that sometimes when God tells the angel of death, okay, you go out and destroy, I'm giving you permission, right? Remember, angels they have a certain function. They don't have free will. They can't just decide to do certain things because they want to. They can only do things if God wills it. So if the angel of the sea decides, I want to make a tsunami, destroy half of Southeast Asia, I want to keep Atlas back in business, God can say yay or nay. If he says yay, okay, let him do what he wants. If he says nay, they can't do it. They say, I'm going to do it. God's going to say, I don't think so. You have power, but you don't have full power. Right? You can't go against what I want you to do. So the Talmud says, though, when God gives the Malach HaMavis, the angel of death, and he's an angel with a purpose. He snuffs out life. He's God's messenger to do this. Nonetheless, in such a case, if God doesn't want him to do it, he won't do it. But in a case where he is going to cause havoc, and he's going to cause destruction, if a righteous person is there at the same time, then sometimes that righteous person can get caught as what we say, being at the wrong place at the right time. And a righteous person can get caught up and can be killed as well. Damaged, killed. So you can ask the question, which we're not going to have an answer for, but you can ask anyway, and that is, why would God allow that? Why would he allow a righteous person to be at the quote-unquote wrong spot at the right time in order for God to take him? God can take him in any number of different ways. Why does he have to get caught up with evil people, with Rishoyim, and get knocked around at the same time? And the answer is, we don't know. But the reality is that if they're mixed together, tragedy could befall them. You can say, but it's not their fault. They were put in that situation, and that's what happened. Okay? There are a lot of questions you can ask on that. I'm just bringing out what the idea is. So here, Avraham says, fine, I understand you're going to wipe out these people. I understand they deserve to be wiped out. Really, if they deserve to be wiped out, then judgment has to be done. And, that's okay. But he says, if you're going to do judgment, have mercy on the righteous that are there. If there are righteous people there, don't take them. Let them die a natural death or, something else. Don't get them caught up in the same thing as Sedom. They're not comparable. Right? The people of Sedom were not allowed to survive because they destroyed society. Society, if God let them stay around, would not have been able to function. Just like God destroyed the world for that reason that we mentioned in Parshas Noah, the idea that people were so bad and the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, was that they stole, even though they committed immorality and idolatry, right, which were more severe than robbery. Nonetheless, the final decree is on robbery because that's something everyone knows that you're not allowed to do. And they did it in a way where you couldn't be prosecuted. That would be a breakdown of all laws for Jews and for non-Jews. And that's why God said, I can't let this go, and I have to wipe everyone out. Now, Sedom, they were, they did all kinds of things that they didn't deserve to stay alive. There's another issue just mentioned as a side point. You have societies that, that could be so bad, they also may have deserved to be wiped out. Why specifically Sedom here? Either you can tell me they're so bad they deserve to be wiped out, which could be. Or another aspect of it is, Sedom is if it's a place that's close to God, right? It's like in God's backyard, so to speak. You don't go messing with God's backyard. That means that if a person lives in the land of Israel, for example, and they decide, or they live a life not in accordance with Torah, so there are tremendous repercussions. The reason is because if you're living in the palace of the king, when you transgress, it's 10 times worse. You tell me, but if I transgress, I live outside the land. Yeah, that's also bad. And you're also going to pay a price at some level. But you want to do it in the palace of the king? You want to spit in the king's face, so to speak, and say that it's, you don't care? The repercussions are going to be 10 times worse. As my Rebbe always says, I'm not afraid of this madman in Iran. And I'm not afraid of what these other nations surrounding Israel may or may not do to them. What I'm afraid of is people who transgress Torah in the land of Israel. Because the punishment is 10 times greater. When he wanted to come to Eretz Israel after the war, after World War II, he went to get a bracha from the Telzer Iwi, the Telzer rabbinic scholar, genius, Rav Mordechai Pogromansky, may his name be blessed. He wanted a blessing from him before he came to the land of Israel. So Pogromansky told him, he said, you're going to the Holy Land where God's presence, how powerful the holiness is in the land, even if the temple's destroyed. He said, every time you speak Lashon Hara, every time you speak badly against someone else, you know what the repercussions are if you do it in the palace of the king? He said, every time you do a transgression, willfully, not willfully, in the palace of the king, you know what the repercussions are? He started going on and on with this list of things that if you do wrong in the palace of the king, like fire and brimstone, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Like, you really think, this is what he told them, you really think you're up to going there? He said, I'm not up to going there. Rav Pogramansky said. He said, I'm afraid to go up there, that I won't even be on that level to even survive there, spiritually. You're talking about, one of the Torah giants, according to everybody in that generation. He died at a very young age, his early 40s. But the absolute genius in Torah. So my Rebbe was beside himself. He's like, don't you have a blessing? Like a small blessing? Bon voyage, have a nice trip, sayonara, like something. Give me something. So when he saw that he was determined, to live there, and he wanted to live to the highest standard, he gave him a blessing. But he said you have to be careful. Because one of the trials of the land of Israel is you have the greatest amount of holiness in the world is there. Because God's presence is still there, even the temple's destroyed. At the same time, you have the most impurity as well. You have both forces working together, one against the other. So he says you have to be real careful. Because if you get too close and then you fall away or something happens, so you can get burnt badly. My Rebbe's father always used to say, better be a Jew in the diaspora wanting to come to the land of Israel than a Jew in Eretz Israel who wants to go to the diaspora. Right? Always thinking the grass is greener. If you can't get to the land and live there, that's one thing. But don't wish if you lived there that you'd have it better somewhere else. So, if you're in the palace of the king, and you're messing around, not doing what you need to do, then the repercussions are stronger. And it's not something that you want to mess with. Sedom was in the palace of the king. As we mentioned, God has an infinite amount of mercy. But at some point, God says, that's it. I'm taking over. I've had it. They're not going to repent. And they're evil incarnate. And, I have to end it. And God wipes them out. So Abraham's prayer is, just don't take the righteous with him. Let me find enough righteous people that I can at least save them. So God says, fine, I'll give you 50. So he says, what about 40? What about 30? So he gets them down to 10. But he couldn't find 10 righteous people in order to save the city. The city had to be destroyed. So there are a lot of things in the world that we don't understand. And in 10 lifetimes, we're also not going to understand. So it doesn't mean things aren't sad. Doesn't mean things aren't tragic. It just means we're limited with what we see. That's just because we're human. Once we're out of our bodies and a pure soul, then we'll understand things a lot clearer. So that's, in a nutshell, the story of Sedom. It's not that Abraham's praying that these evil people should really not be killed. He understands someone who does something that bad, they deserve judgment. And God will take care of them. He wasn't coming to contradict that. What the issue was Abraham saying, God, you want to take them and you want to destroy them with divine judgment. I have no claim. I can't say anything. That's your call. But at least don't take the righteous with them. Don't put the righteous, whoever the righteous may be at that time, and don't take them. Don't put them in the wrong place at the right time. Take them some other way. These people have a specific status. Yes, they cause people to go astray. Yes, they cause them to worship idols. Yes, they killed people who gave charity and helped out others. Yes, they deserve judgment. But the righteous that were with him don't. They don't deserve to be caught up in it. And that was his prayer. So that's one aspect that I wanted to speak about. The other is, and obviously if we're looking at Parshas Vaera, how can you not speak about the Akedah? Right? Speak about the binding of Isaac. You go to chapter 22. God tests Avraham. And he says, Avraham, he says, here I am. He says, take your son, your only one, the one you love, Isaac, go to the land of Moriah, bring him up as an offering upon one of the mountains which I shall tell you. So Avraham understands, as God says, Avraham understands, he just went through circumcision. He went through having a child, miraculously. At 100 years old, his wife was 90. They get rid of Yishmael. They banish him. God says, this is going to be your progeny, and he's going to pass things down to the next generation, and that's going to make the Jewish people, etc. And then God tests him and says, I want you to bring him up as a sacrifice. Now, in the vernacular, I would say a lot of sense it does not make. It goes against everything he believes. Everything he's been told. That's why the Torah says, take your son. Rashi says, but I have two sons. No, take your only one. Well, what do you mean? I have more than one. No, the one you love. Isaac makes it clear. Right? He wants to make clear who he's supposed to take. There's no doubt. So how does he do it? How does he go through this test without saying, again, in my language, are you out of your cotton picking head? You gotta be crazy. You just told me for a long time you're gonna have this son. It's gonna be miraculous. You know, you were 100 and your wife was 90 and he's going to be called your progeny. All of a sudden you tell me bring him up as a sacrifice? I should kill him? That's what the text should say. Avraham should say, God, you know, you came to me in a vision. You know, you healed me. I brought your name to the world. I understand, you know, you're the creator of the world, and there's a blueprint and how everything fits together. And I've been bringing hundreds and thousands of people under your wing to be Jewish or whatever, at least to go away from idolatry, whatever they were, whatever his students were at that time. You now tell me, take everything I believe, chuck it in the river. Forget I said anything. Take your son, your only son, the one you love, and bring him up and kill him. Makes no sense. However you want to slice it, and we'll do it justice. Logically speaking, simple explanation here, a lot of sense it doesn't make. What does Avraham say? Avraham wakes up early in the morning, saddles his donkey, takes two young men with him, takes Isaac, splits the wood, he goes. No questions. He's not saying, like I wanted to say, what, are you crazy? Doesn't say that. He does exactly what God wants him to do, even if it doesn't make any sense. So the Midrashim tell stories that the Satan sends all kinds of things in his way to stop him. Right? He's walking there's a river, and he's walking through the river, and the river's coming up to his neck, and Avraham says, God, you want me to do this? I got a river in front of me. River splits, walks through. Right? Different trials along the way that try and stop him. And he says the same thing. God, you want me to do this? This is what I'm supposed to do. You got to take it away. And God takes it away. He doesn't say, I don't understand. He doesn't ask the contradictions. He does absolutely God's will. So we'll see at the end what happens. What about Isaac? What about Yitzchak? Yitzchak, commentaries tell us, wasn't a little kid. Yitzchak was 37. Yitzchak is 37. He could have said, Dad, you want to think about this a little bit? You're going to take wood, you're going to make an offering, I'm supposed to die, get burnt up. Maybe you want to get a second opinion. Maybe you don't want to do it. Maybe, whatever. He doesn't say anything. He goes willingly. Not only that, he tells him, the Medrash says, tie me up tighter so I don't move, so I don't become a blemish. I want to be a totally burnt offering. I want to do exactly what God wants, and I'm willing to die. He had just as big of a, it would seem, as a test as Avraham. Yeah, Avraham has to be the one to kill him. But he could have ran away. He could have, his father was 100. He was 37. Probably would have been too hard to overcome him. Even as strong as he was in his youth, he's 100 years old. He goes willingly. Comes the end, and he says, as he's about to do it, he binds Isaac, right, chapter 22, verse 9, they arrive at the place where God spoke to him, builds an altar, arranges the wood, bounds his son, and Isaac says, tie me tight. The Medrash says, tie me tight so I don't move, so I'm a pure sacrifice. I don't want a blemish. We're going to do it right. Right? Don't mess it up, Dad. That's what he says. Right? Not literally, but I want to do it 100%. He places them on the altar, on the wood. He stretches out his hand. He's ready to do it. He goes, and then he hears a voice. An angel of Hashem calls to him and says, Abraham, says, here I am. He says, don't kill him. Don't do anything. We see you're God-fearing. And he sees a ram, and he kills the ram, etc. And he offered that as an offering instead of his son. Avram's not done. Avram's got the knife before he sees the ram. Right? As the commentaries tell us, what does he say? He says, well, I didn't bring him up here for nothing. Let me at least make a blemish in him. Let me draw blood. Let me do something. He's on the altar for a reason. Don't let me just bring him up here for nothing. Comes along the Torah. The Torah says, no. Don't touch him. He's perfect as he is. You have to go through this test. We see that you're God-fearing. He sees the ram, and he kills the ram, and he sacrifices the ram. Now, we see that it's a test really for both of them. The issue here is, as we mentioned before, he's gone through 9 other tests. This test, at the end, the Torah says that we see you're a God-fearing man. He had 9 other tests. The war of the 4 kings against the 5 kings. Lech Lecha or Kasdim. Right, going in the fire. Leaving his homeland. He went through a lot of other tests. Throughout all the other tests, it doesn't say God says you're a God-fearing man. We see that you're God-fearing. Only says it by this. So the question that always bothers me, this parsha, is God knows past, present, and future. Avraham was 9 for 9. Got tremendous amount of merit, or, after 120 years. Or longer, he lived longer than that. But he gets merit for everything he's done. Tremendous amount of merit. Why make him go through this? Agonizing. For him. For his son. Not only that, at the beginning of next week's parsha, Parshas Vaera, she hears part of the story. Messenger comes in. Tells a part of the story what happened. And before the person had a chance to say that Isaac didn't die, she dies. She couldn't, her heart gave out. From the shock. So commentaries say, if you're going to tell a story, you better know how to tell it. Because if you don't tell the story right, you could kill someone. Why didn't they just say, listen, there was this unbelievable thing. Avraham took Isaac off and he was going to kill, but he didn't. They just should have said, Isaac didn't die. Now let me tell you the story. And then her soul wouldn't have, it just went out. From absolute shock. So the commentators learn out there, you better learn how to tell a story. If you don't tell the story right, you can kill someone. So, in this case, Avram's 9 for 9. Everybody knows how great he is. He's wealthy, he's got power, has children, miraculously. There's no question about his righteousness, his chesed. If God knows past, present, and future, forget it. Give it to him. Give him the merit now. Don't make him go through that agonizing moment. So the Ramban here says that you know why God can't do that? Because potential that's not actualized is not called actualized potential. You can't give him credit for something that he didn't do. So my Rebbe told me once during what happened with 9/11, when the buildings went down. So someone called him up, wanted to make a sudas hoda, wanted to make a meal, a festive meal, because he felt he got saved. He didn't get there. He was supposed to be at the World Trade Center. He wasn't there. So he wanted to say a gomel, wanted to say the bracha that God saved him when you're in a dangerous situation, or when, let's say, you fly overseas, different things, when you make this blessing. But he wanted to make this blessing in order that he was saved. So my Rebbe said, were you there? He goes, no. But I was supposed to be there. So my Rebbe said, let me ask you again. Were you there or not? He said, no. He said, then you can't make the bracha. You can't make the blessing. It for sure would be a blessing in vain. Because you weren't there. The fact that you could have been there, whatever, you can't make the bracha. Brother, I also had a dangerous situation. Walked outside, I could have been underneath that bus. But I wasn't. Thank you very much. This could have happened. No, you weren't there. You can't make the bracha. So too over here. Not only didn't he reach he would not have become who he was had he not gone through this. What it did was it solidified his legacy. It made the other 9 much stronger. He would have been great if he didn't do it. Let's make clear. According to everybody, he was great at that time. But the question is, he could have been even greater. So I would have said, so fine. You know what he's going to do, right? We talked about or one video I mentioned about this idea when I was growing up. We used to have film strips. Somebody would narrate, and each thing would be in a slide, right? One slide, the film strip, you have a projector, and so, a person would speak, and then you go to the next frame, you go ding, then you go to the next frame, ding, 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 till you get to the end, right? If God is all-knowing, He knows the first ding, and then He knows the last ding. He knows it. So if He knows what's going to happen anyway, so forget the last ding. Give Him the credit. Give Him the credit. Says the Ramban, no such thing. Because if you didn't do it, you didn't do it. Do not pass go, don't collect 200. It didn't happen. You weren't there. No bracha. It boggles the mind. Because again, this is just me. I would say he's so great now, leave him. And the answer is, God doesn't leave him for this last trial. Because the last trial says everything about the first 9. The last trial goes against everything he believes. Everything he holds dear. Right? His offspring depend on Yitzchak being alive. If he dies, guess what? No more Jewish people. We'll all be speaking Arabic. Or, Aramaic, Arabic, whatever. No more Jewish people. Gone. Unless someone else in history came along. That's pretty bad. He had to live. God promised him. God's not going to go against what he said, is he? Avraham says, doesn't matter. It's not for me to judge. This is what God wants me to do. This is what I'm going to do. It doesn't make sense. I would have said, you're out of your cotton picking mind. Like, think again? No. Give someone else a test, not me. This son, I was 100 years old. You made my wife young again. You made this a miracle? And now you say, nope, sorry, kill it. Game over. No more Jewish people. That mean I don't have to eat matzah next year? Oh, great, no more matzah. Makes no sense. And that's the test. Besides the physical thing of bringing him up or whatever, the test is he doesn't say anything. He says, okay, this is what God wants. This is what I'm going to do. It doesn't have to make sense to me. I'm not the creator of the world. I don't understand what he wants. In certain things. Because God is God and I'm human. So I have to do what he wants. Even if it doesn't make sense. So when we keep Torah mitzvahs, we delve into as much detail as possible, try and understand why we do things. And sometimes the reason why we do things is because God said it, we do it. There are reasons given for many things, but they may not be the only reason given. There are things that make more sense. There are things that make less sense. But if it's all given by God, and God passed it down to Moshe, and he passed it down to the Jewish people, that's it. I have an obligation to do it. It's not like, if I feel like doing it, I will. If I don't, I don't. It depends which line I was on at Mount Sinai. If I was in the Reform line, I didn't get any mitzvahs. If I was in the conservative line, maybe I got a few. But if I was in the Orthodox line, so I got everything. Right? Obviously, that's not how it happened. We have free choice. We can make good choices. We can make bad choices. But see, you can't go against what Moshe says. You can't deny anything that Moshe says. Because the Torah says, the book of Deuteronomy, when it comes to a false prophet, if he does miracles, but he tells people to go against what Moshe said, then you kill him. He's a false prophet. But where did Moshe get his power from? How do we know Moshe is the greatest of all prophets? And he's the one to carry God's word. Because God said so. God gives his stamp of approval on Moshe himself. Big stamp, big hand of approval. You go against what Moshe says, then you don't believe in God. Oh, Moshe added this. No, he didn't. Moshe was a scribe. The question about the last 8 verses, whether Joshua wrote it or he wrote it in tears, however it was done, that talks about, his death. Moshe is a scribe. He can't change anything. You deny Moshe, you deny God. So the Torah is not about, well, I feel like, I don't feel like. It's either you believe in God, and I'm going to keep it, or I'm an idolater. You say, you are a fanatic. What do you mean I'm an idolater? How can you say it's either Torah or idolatry? Because let's call a spade a spade. If God said it and it's true, then I have to keep it. And things haven't changed. Only how things apply. Is electricity really called fire when it comes to the laws of Shabbos? Oh, you're changing the Torah. No, I'm not. There was no such thing as electricity 3,500 years ago. So you want to find out, well, gee, electricity doesn't do anything. Oh, really? It's not the same as fire. Really? I get an idea. Take off the socket, take a screwdriver and stick it in. Oh, did you get electrocuted? Oh, it didn't do anything, really. So if I flick a switch, I'm not doing anything. Aha. It's just an electric current. I haven't done it. Turn on and off. I haven't done anything. Well, it works like fire, doesn't it? Right? Try fire and stick your hand there and see what happens for a while. Open up an electric socket. Stick your hand in there and see what happens. I bet similar things will happen. Oh, you're changing the Torah. You're making it up. Sorry. We're trying to explain whether this is relevant to this generation or not. See, we got a lot of pretenders to the throne. And the pretenders will say, oh, it's made up. There were, 4 authors and a redactor, like the Jews ate the same hallucinogenic mushroom in the desert. That's where the Torah came from. Torah is black and white. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to take out of. Without a running commentary, Torah makes absolutely no sense. You explain to me that says in Parshas Emor, when it says that you should live in a sukkah for 7 days. Well, what does a sukkah look like? Boy, the Torah doesn't tell me. Really? 3 walls? 2 walls and 1 wall the size of a handbreadth? That's enough? With a thatched roof? That's a sukkah? I wouldn't have thought that. And then the Torah says, I want you to bring palm fronds, and I want you to bring a pre-Eitz Hadar, a nice smelling fruit. Well, that's very nice. Some people think it's a quince. Some people think it's an apple. Some people may think it's a peach or a plum. No one in their right mind is going to say it's an etrog, a lemon on steroids. No one's going to say that. But how do they know? How do they know that? Ooh, maybe they made it up. Maybe these rabbis were so brilliant they made it up. Maybe. Again, maybe they all ate the same hallucinogenic mushroom. Maybe. Maybe Saturn was out of orbit. That's how all the miracles in Egypt occurred. Right? There is such a theory. Those beautiful rings. Imagine, they were in the heavens in one spot. And that's how all the miracles happened. I got a better explanation. Maybe it's the way the Torah said it. Maybe. I know, again, I'm showing off that I'm a fanatic, right? So we'll keep that fanaticism to a side. Be that as it may. The idea is the same. If I'm going to keep the Torah, I keep it because I believe God gave the Torah to Moshe. It's not a pick and choose type of thing. And if I don't believe in Moshe, I don't believe in God. Because where does Moshe's power come from? Where does his authority come from? Gee, it comes from God himself. God gives his stamp of approval. And nobody else. So that's why it's either God or idolatry. So, there's the belief in one God. There's the belief he wants the good for us. And then we heard this story. And then we hear, take your son. Your only son. The one I promised all these things to. Sorry, forget everything you know. Comes along the Torah and says, yeah, that's what he had to do. And he passed the test. But if he wouldn't have gone through it, he still would have been great. It just wouldn't have solidified his legacy. Because unreached potential is exactly that. It's unreached. Can't get it back. In theory. Because he didn't do it. So let's give him credit. Okay. Let's rewind the tape. Can't get credit. Right? Doesn't work like that. Ding, ding. Right? Doesn't work like that. So that's the scary part. Is that unreached potential is unreached potential. When we get upstairs after 120 years, I'll end with this idea. That after 120 years, and God's going to play two movies. Which everyone that they have clinical death says this. They see one movie, which is like their life flashing before their eyes. Right? They see everything they did in their life. Second movie is what they could have done. Unreached potential. That's a form of hell, because if you don't reach that potential, whatever it is, then that's the scary part. So Avraham took what was inside him, and God unraveled it, brought it out physically. So he took this unreached potential and made it reachable. And made him go through that. That was the purpose of the test. Anyone interested? I also give conversion classes and Noahide classes. You can take a look at my Facebook page at Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism, as well as my blog, Rabbi Chaim Coffman.blogspot.com, RabbiChaimCoffman.blogspot.com, or Beyond Noahides on Facebook. Everyone have a great Shabbos.